Today's daf is Chulin daf Kuf Yud, and we are 10 lines from the bottom of daf Kuf Tes Amid Beis. So the Mishnah on the bottom of daf Kuf Tes Amid Aleph turned its attention to another subcategory within the sugis of Basa v'Chalav, and that is the sugya of Chal. So Chal is the udder of the animal. It's the part of the animal that has milk. When you milk an animal, you're milking the udder of the animal. And the udder poses a particular challenge as it relates to kashrus, specifically basa v'chalav. And that is because the udder is meat. It has in it milk. Thus, the question is it okay to eat the chal of an animal, or is it not okay to eat the chal of an animal? The Mishnah said on the bottom of Daf Kuf Tes Amid Aleph, HaKchal koiroi u'moitzias chalavoi. That if you want to eat the chal, what you have to do is you have to tear it open first, remove the milk, and then afterwards eat it. It says the Mishnah, Loi karoi, let's say you did not tear open the chal and remove the milk. Einoi over olav. You're not going to be over anything. Now, the lashon of the Mishnah is very sassam. What does Einoi over olav mean? Does it mean it's mutter? Does it mean Einoi over olav? There's no malchus, for example, but at the same time, it's going to be aser. And the Gemara brought two lishonos in a memra that Rab Zeira said in the name of Rab. The first lishon was Amar Rab Zeira, Amar Rab. It was the first lines of Daf Kuf Tes Amid Beis. Einoi over olav mutter. That it's mutter l'katchila even to eat the chal despite the fact that you didn't tear it open. So, you're supposed to tear it open. But in the event that you cooked it or you roasted it without actually tearing it open, the halacha is it's going to be mutter to eat it l'katchila. Then the Gemara brought another lishna, what Rab Zeira said in the name of Rab, that einoi over olav aser, that einoi over olav just means on the da'iraisa level, but at the same time, if you cooked or roasted the chal without tearing it open, the halacha is it's going to be aser to eat. And in the hemshach of Shabbos' daf, the Gemara said Tanya kavase the lishna kama. The Gemara the brisa that supported the first lishna of the Gemara, and that is chal shebishloi bechalavai mutter. That if you cooked the chal or roasted the chal without tearing it open, the halacha is it's going to be mutter l'katchila. So it sounds like even though there's an idea of chal, you're supposed to tear it open because of the chalav that's inside the chal, but this is only on a real l'katchila level, stating that if you didn't tear it open and you cooked it, it's going to be okay. And the truth is, at first glance, it's sarach bir. Why is it okay? The chal is basar. The chalav that's inside the chal is chalav. It says in the Torah, you're not allowed to cook basar and chalav together. If you cook basar and chalav together, derech bishul asar Torah, you're not allowed to eat the basar and chalav. So why is it okay to go now and eat the chal if it was cooked together with its chalav? The short answer is because there's a halacha that even though basar v'chalav is aser, but chalav of a behema shchuta is okay. The Torah says, Lo sevashel gedi b'chalev imay, and the Gemara Darshans, we're going to see it in the coming dafin, that the only time it's aser, basar v'chalav m'deiraisa, is if the chalav came from an animal that's royal yosem, from a live animal. So if you milk a live animal, you cook that milk together with meat, that's basar v'chalav d'oraisa. If the animal, however, is in a state now where it can't be a mother anymore, it's dead, even if it had a kosher shchita, what's called chalav mesa or chalav shchuta, that chalav is not aser m'deiraisa. Chal is always going to be chalav shchuta. You want to eat chal, not eating evim and achai. You're eating chal of a behema shchuta. So even though there's chalav inside the chal, that chalav is always going to be chalav shchuta, which is on the outside looking in as it relates to the halachos of basar v'chalav. So whenever we're discussing chal, we're anyways not handling basar v'chalav deiraisa, because the chalav by definition is chalav shchuta, which means that it's not subject to the laws of basar v'chalav b'deiraisa. Now, the truth is that chalav shchuta, even though it's not asr b'deiraisa, it is asr b'derabbanan. So, from a derabbanan standpoint, it should be asr. Stating that, the Chachamim said that when is chalav shchuta aser midrabanan? That's if you take the chalav and you mix it together with the basar and you cook it. That's the time that the chachamim will geyser even on chalav shchuta. But that's not what's happening with chal. Chal is the milk that was inside the udder of the animal when you shechted it. You're not taking chalav shchuta and now pouring it into your kedera. That's your tipas. No, what you have over here is something that naturally had the milk inside. The chalav shchuta never left the chal. al cholav kazeh, the Chachamim never made the gezerah, and it's for that reason we're even having this conversation. So again, Chal is a discussion, it's a Mishnah, the Gemara, Tula Shoynes and Rav, it's known from as being one of the more difficult sugis in the sugi of Basav Chalav, but the Muscharishin as it relates for Daf Yomi purposes, what's the Shaila with Chal? There's Basar and there's Chalav. The Teretz says because the Chalav is anyways Chalav Shchuta, and even though Chalav Shchuta is Asim in the Rabbanon, that's only Chalav Shchuta that departed the animal, but this is Chalav that never left the animal, it's still inside the other, thus Bekahai Gavna, it would be different. What the Gemara seemed to say, the takeaway of the second half of yesterday's daf, is that there's two Lashonis and what Rav held as it relates to Chal, Tanya Kavase Delish Nekama, which seems to be that as long as you cook it or roast it, in today's daf there'll be nuances between Bishul and Sli, Ayim Rishonim, that's beyond the scope of what we do, but for now, if you roast it for sure, and maybe even if you cook it, that would be enough to say that even if you didn't tear it open, even though the chalav is still inside, on such a chalav, Shchuta Chalav never made a gzeira, it's going to be okay to eat it l'katchila. Either way, on that note, the Gemara begins with a classic Gemara. Amrulei Yalta le Rav Nachman. Rav Nachman's wife's name was Yalta. And Yalta told Rav Nachman Mechti, called the Aslan Rachmana Sharlan Kavasi. Everything that the Torah said is Aser. The Torah was also matter. In other words, Aslan Dama Sharlan Kavdi. You're not allowed to eat blood, but at the same time, you're allowed to eat liver. We're going to see in tomorrow's daf. Tomorrow's daf is going to be hashtag chop liver. That's really the topic of tomorrow's daf. It's all about liver from a kashrah standpoint. How you kasher liver, how you prepare it, how you salt it. And the reason is because the liver is saturated in dam. Now, at the end of the day, you're allowed to eat liver. So, being that you're allowed to eat liver, Yalta told Rav Nachman, even though the Torah said you're not allowed to eat blood, but if you want to be toyem a tam dam, you could eat liver. Liver has in it a tam dam. Nida dam toyar. The Torah said that dam nida is aser, but at the same time, there is a way where a person can experience ba'ifin heter dam nida, so to speak, and that is dam toyer. Rashi says, what does dam toyer mean? Either it means dam psulim, or it means that a yoledes, after she has a baby, so she's a nida for a certain period of time, midday raisa, we don't have these halachas anymore, but midday raisa, after 1 week or 2 weeks, depending if it's a boy or a girl, all the dam that she sees is not dam nida anymore, it's dam toyer. So it's like dam nida, but it's really mutter. Chelev behema, the Torah said chelev behema is aser, chelev chay is mutter. Chazer, the Torah said that a chazer is aser, right? You can't eat chazer, but if somebody wants to know what a chazer tastes like, this is the part of the Gemara that's famous. Moicha de shibuta, eat the mayach, eat the brain of the shibuta. Rashi says that's a fish, and this shibuta's mayach tastes like chazer. Gerusa, which is a non-kosher bird. Lishna de kavra, you can taste it. You can eat the kosher bird. Ishes ish, Terry said ishes is aser, but grusha b'chayi baila, that's mutter, and that's a little bit of ishes ish. Ishes ach, the Torah said is aser. Yavama is mutter. Kutis, you're not allowed to marry a non-Jewish woman, but this is the parish of Yefas Torah. Yefas Torah is dafka talking about a non-kosher woman. Said Yalta to Rav Nachman. So I understand, I see a theme here, that even though the Torah said a lot of things are aser, but everything that the Torah said is aser, if you want, you can find it with a hechsher. You can find it with a badatz hashkach, a mahadrim and a mahadrim. So your question was, I want to eat basar v'chalav. Find me, where can I find basar v'chalav that's going to be kosher? Rav Nachman said, go roast for my wife the kral, because by roasting the kral, there's chalav inside of it. That's how you're going to be able to taste your basar. Could you go to katchila and just roast kral? But now the Mishnah says koiroi. Doesn't the Mishnah say that you have to tear it open first? So Nachman said ahulik deira. That's talking about if you're going to cook it. I didn't say cook it, I said roast it. There's a bryce, one of the bryces that the Gemara brought earlier on the Yom, it said that it's only okay b'di'evet to be mavashal it, and Rashi speaks out on the top of Kuf Yud Amud Aleph that this bishloi doesn't mean cooking, it means roasting. So it sounds like that even roasting is only okay b'di'evet. The Gemara says, really katchila you should be able to roast. If I did the Gemara Sefer Kevish Bishlo b'chalava asura, that same bryce again, that was only yesterday's daf, mentioned that the chalav that's found in the cave, in the stomach of the animal, that chalav is aser, and there, even if you cook it b'di'evet, it's still not okay. So that's why the Reisha mentioned shabisha b'di'evet as well. But really, Rav Nachman held that it's not okay l'katchila to cook the chal, but it is okay to roast the chal. Thus you see a chiluk between bishul and sli, as we mentioned in the intro, as it relates to chal. But Rav Nachman told his wife Yaltas, you want to know what basar v'chalav tastes like? There's a way to be toyem basar v'chalav, even though you can't eat a cheeseburger, but you can eat chal. And the chal has dam inside of it, and it's okay to roast it likatchila, like the first lishna of Rav on Daf Kuf Tes on the top of the Yomid, where the Gemara had a Tanya Kavase, the lishna kama de Rav. And again, this is all based on what we spoke at in the intro, that even though the Kral has it at Chalav, it's Chalav Shchuta, and on such a Chalav Shchuta, the Chacham never went ahead and made Xeris. We're going to come back to this Gemara, but first, the Gemara is going to continue to discuss Rav's halachas of Chal. So we said, Rav, there were two Lishonos what Rav said. The first Lishna was that Rav said it's okay l'katchila to eat the Chal. Mishnah says tear it open, but if you didn't tear it, you could eat it. It's fine. Lishna Basra, the second Lishna in Rav is that it's not okay. You're supposed to go ahead and tear it off. And there was a Tanya Kavasi to the Lishna Kama. So the Gemara is going to struggle now to understand what was Pshat in the second Lishna. The second version was Rab Zera had heard in the name of Rav that it's not okay to go ahead and eat a roasted chal or a cooked chal. L'chayra, there's a brisa that says before that it is okay. So it says the Gemara, Kisalik Rabbi Lazar, where Rabbi Lazar went from Abataj, he saw Ashkechil Zeiri, he met Zeiri, Amalei, so he told him, Ikatana das Nayel Rav chal. I mean, I'm wondering, where did Rav get this from? The way Reb Zera had it in the second Lishna that Chal is Aser. I mean, it's a mistake because it's connected to Brisa. But this mistake must have come from somewhere. So did anybody ever tell Rav something that may have misled him? So the Gemara says, Achvil Rav Yitzchak bar Avdimi. Says the Iri told Rabbi Lazar, go talk to Rav Yitzchak bar Avdimi. Amalei went to Rav Yitzchak bar Avdimi and he says, tell me, do you know where Rav got this from? Amalei he told him, Ani lo yishin yisu like Chal kolikra. I never told Rav anything about Chal. But I do know the rest of the story. What happened was Rav Bika Matzah, the God of Argeder. Rav came to a place, he saw an open field, and he felt that you have to put up a fence to protect it, and he went ahead and he built the fence. What is this? The Rav Iklal Tatlafush. Rav once came to Tatlafush. That was a city. Shamalai Hiyitzah, you overhear there was a woman talking. The Kamar Lechavirta, she tells her friend, Riva de Bistra, tell me, I'm looking for a recipe. I have a quarter pound of chicken and of basar, and I want to put milk inside of it. How much milk am I supposed to put in the recipe? What the people in Tatlavish, there's such a miratzim, they don't even know that basar v'chalav is aser. So the Gemara says he remained there and he taught them the laws of basar v'chalav. And not only did he teach them the laws of basar v'chalav, he even went ahead and told them that kral is going to be aser. I mean, Rav really held that kral is mutter. He knew the first lish, he knew the Tanya Kavasi, the lish nakama. He knew that kral is mutter the katchila. So what's pshat is this Messiah Reb Zera heard a lishna basra that Rav said it's awesome. This was the rest of the story. Yitzchak Avdimi told him it was a psak for a kehila that were being very lax in the laws of basar v'chalav, and he felt he had to be mechazik them, and the way he was going to be mechazik them was going ahead and being so machmer in the laws of basar v'chalav that even chal was going to be asr. So for a functioning kehila, it's okay to have chal, but he felt for them this was important. That's why he told me. Where it says Rav Kahana Masach, the aforementioned was Rav Kahana's version of what's the beer in Rav's Lishna Basra, who said Chal is Aser if there's a brisa that says it's mutter. Rav Yitzchak Rabbi had a different version. He said, "Ano Chal shamanika shanisila." Rav Yitzchak Abdimi. So again, Rabbi Lazar comes to Eretz Yisrael, he meets Zeiri. He says, do you have any information about why there may be this Messiah that Rav said Chal is Aser? So he tells him, go speak to Rav Yitzchak bar Avdimi. In the first verse, Rav Yitzchak Avdimi told him that Rav issued this psak for a kehila that was very lax in basar v'chalav. In the second version, Rav Yitzchak Avdimi told him, "Ano Chal shalmi nika shenitzilei." I was talking about I was the one who told Rav the halacha. So what you heard Rav say, he actually heard from me, and the halacha was talking about the kral of an animal that's nursing. And being that the animal's nursing, so there's a lot of milk. So being that it's a lot of milk, it's that type of kral that's going to be awesome. And I told it to Reb Chia, and Reb Chia, he said, was the one who told it to Rav. Reb Chia was a big charif, Rashi says, and thought for sure Rav would understand on his own. He didn't think he had to explain. He thought Rav would understand on his own that the only time chal is aser is the chal of menika, and as a result, all this confusion happened. But again, Rav for sure only said one thing. He said that Chal is mutter, like the brisa that supported Rav. Either is this Ikad Amri that Reb Zera heard in the name of Rav that Chal is aser. One of two things happened. Either it was a special psak that he gave for a specific kehila, or what happened was he was talking about the Chal of a Meinekes, and Rav didn't fully understand it when he heard it from Reb Chia, who heard it from Reb Yitzchak bar Avdimi. Just one interesting thing before we go weiter. So Rav Bika Matzah v'Gadaba. According to the first version, Rav comes to this kehila called Tatlafush, and he sees that they're being very makel in the laws of basar v'chalav, and he went ahead and he was mezares them. So I saw in the Sha'ar Mitzianim Ba'alacha from Shlomo Zalman Braun, so he brings from the Igeres of Rav Shri Regaim. So Rav Shri Regaim was one of the Gaonim, and a lot of history that we have, a lot of our Jewish history comes from Rav Shri Regaim. He wrote a letter, and there's a lot of fascinating history about the Tanoim and the Amayraim that we know from the letter of Rav Shri Regaim. So one of the things he brings over there is the Rav Ozav es Shmuel ben Hardai Shayim Makom Torah. Rav Right? You have Rav and Shmuel, Damrin Shavaya, they're always talking and learning, they're always arguing. So Rav used to live together with Shmuel in the Hardah. Shmuel was the Rav in Hardah, and Rav lived together with Shmuel. And then Rav decided one day that why am I in the Hardah? In Hardah, there's so much Torah in Hardah anyways. They have Shmuel. They don't need me. So he decided that he's going to go to a place where there was no Torah. He's Surah, and he went to Surah, and he crossed Masa Mechasi, which has another name. It also refers to as Masa Mechasi. And Rav Shira is right. He's just telling the story of Rav. So he goes out to do Kiruv. And he said he found Kehila Shafilu Issa Basa V'chalav Layado. They didn't even know the laws of Basa V'chalav. This is the rest of the story. The city of Tatlafish. V'amar Rav said, Eshev kan at shetar b'toyer b'makam hazeh. V'zeh kamay oisei ma'isa shemefurish b'perakal abasar. Rav bika matzah v'gadav al-geder. U'kishbalu Tatlafish lida ma'isa v'hayr l'nisr chal. It's amazing. Rav actually had this passion. He felt, he was in a Hardah, he was in a makam Torah, any dar el b'makam Torah, and then he decided that he's going to go out. And he decides to go do Kiruv. He goes to Surah. At the time, when Rav went, today Surah, we think of Surah and Pumpadisa and Hardah. It's synonymous. It's synonymous with a makam Torah. That's because of the influence. Like when the Chazon Ish went to Bnei Brak, there was nothing in Bnei Brak. Chazon Ish created Bnei Brak. So that's what happened. The point is that he went to Surah, he went to Masa Mechasi, and he was the one that brought Torah there. But at the time that Rav settled there was so little there that they mamish didn't even know the laws of Basa V'chol. I thought it's a fascinating idea that Rav, you never think of Rav as being a Makarev. I mean, you think of Rav as giving, the top shir in the best yeshiva. But Rav goes to a city like Surah, a city like Masa. They don't even know the law. He's teaching them the laws of Basa V'chol. It's unbelievable. Either way, just a shtickle of hergish. Regardless, Dr. Gemara Vayta Rav and Rav and Rabbi Yitzchak bar Yosef iklu the Rav Papi. Rav and Rabbi Yitzchak bar Yosef once came to the city of Rav Papi. I saw them come out of Shul Dechal. So Rav and Rabbi Yitzchak, these two gedolim, they're invited in, and they sit down in the city where Rav Papi is the Rav, and they feed them tafshil dechal, food that was made out of chal. Yitzchak bar Yosef achal. Rav and Yachal. Rav didn't want to eat. He didn't want to eat chal. Amar Abaya. So Abaya said, Rav in techala. Ravin apparently had lost his children during his lifetime. So Abaye referred to Ravin as Tchala, someone who lost his children. He says, why aren't you eating? He said, Mechti, to visit the Rapapi, who was serving him food? Rapapi is Rebbitzin. She was the Balabusta in the house. He said, Rabbi Yitzchak Nafcha Avoy. She's Rabbi Yitzchak Nafcha's daughter. Rabbi Yitzchak Nafcha, Mardu of the Hav. Rabbi Yitzchak Nafcha is everyone knows what a tzaddik he was. Had she not seen this in her mother's house, in her father's house growing up, she would never serve it to you. So he said, Rav, Abaye was very upset at Rav. He says, I don't understand. You go to the Gadol Adar's house, it's not kosher enough? He says, this is Rav Yitzchak Nafcha's daughter who's serving you chal, and you think chal's not kosher. If she's serving it to you, it must be kosher. Says the Gemara, stating that despite the fact that Abaye was upset that Ravin wouldn't eat the chal, and we came out Tanya Kavasi the Lishnakama, and even Rav Nachman told Yalta she could eat the chal, stating that not everywhere in Klal Yisrael did they eat chal. Besurah loy achli. In Surah, the meaning was not to eat chal. Bepumpedisa, however, achli. In Pumpedisa, they did eat chali. Rami bar Tamri, says the Gemara. Do Rami bar Dikuli, Rami bar Tamri. Sometimes he's referred to Rami bar Dikuli, a Tamar, a Dekel. Either way, Pumpedisa, he was from Pumpedisa. Iklu Surah. He came to Surah, but Mali Yomi de Kippuri. It was Erev Yom Kippur. Afkina Kuli Yaman Kachino. Now, Erev Yom Kippur, everybody's eating, right? It's a mitzvah to eat on Erev Yom Kippur. And they were shechting animals, and they took all their chals and they threw it away. Azal iyu. So Rami bar Dikuli or Rami bar Tamri, same person went Noktenu, and he took them, Achlinu, and he ate them. I saw the Kamei Rav Chizda. They brought him before Rav Chizda. Amalei, I might have it hachi. So Rav Chizda asked this Yid. He says, "Why are you eating the chal? We don't eat chal in Surah." Amalei, so he told me, "Ask Rabbi Yehuda." No, I live in Rabbi Yehuda's city. I'm from Pumpedisa, Dachal, and where I come from, we eat it. Amalei, Rav Chizda told him, the halach is that if there's certain halachas that are totally b'minig, so even if you're from a city where the minig is, let's say, to be mekel, but if you go to another city where the minig is to be machmer, you're supposed to be machmer. Well, he told him, I ate it outside the city limits. Right? I didn't eat it inside the chaymos of the city. I walked outside the city. That's where I ate it. So you asked him, Rav Chizis, how did you prepare it? How did you roast it? He told him, he said, I found pits of grapes, and I used those pits to roast it. So he said, how do you know you're allowed to use those pits? Maybe it came from grapes that, well, he told him, it was already after 12 months. Rashi quotes a Mishnah that says that these pits that are yavish, which means they're already 12 months old, there's no way to yayin nesach anymore. At that point, you're allowed to eat it. Be told the gezel have it. Well, they're not yours. You can't just pick off pits from the ground. Maybe it was gzela. He told me, Yish bailam have. I knew already that the owners were miyayish. They called chilfi because there was already things growing on it. So I knew for sure there's no way anybody wasn't miyayish. Chazio. Then Reb Chizda observed this yid Rama bar Dikuli, and he saw that I have a manach tefillin. He wasn't wearing tefillin. Amalei, my time of manchas tefillin. He said, so he told him, why are you wearing tefillin? Amalei, so he told him, he has issues with his stomach. And the Amar Rabbi Yehuda, and I heard from Rabbi Yehuda, you see, he came from Asri to Rabbi Yehuda. So Rabbi Yehuda is his Rebbe. So he told him, tefillin. He said, I heard from Rabbi Yehuda that a Chayla is patim and tefillin. Chazir like a Rami Chuti. Then he saw he wasn't wearing tzitzis. Amalei, so he told him, my time of less chuti. He said, why are you wearing tzitzis? Amalei, he said, talis shulahi. It's not my talis, I borrowed it. From Rabbi Yehuda, and I have another side from Rabbi Yehuda. Everything's from Rabbi Yehuda. He said, talis shula, kol shleishim yayim p'turim and tzitzis. He says, a talis shula every 30 days, for 30 days you're patim and tzitzis. Adahachi, aisulahu gabalei moikavu ve'imei. As this is happening, they brought a person who, they brought him in front of Rav Chizda. This Yid was not honoring his father. He wasn't being mekayim kabedas avicha v'asimecha. Kafsu. So Rav Chizda started beating him. He started hitting him. Because the halach is that if someone doesn't mekayim a mitzvah saseh, so you can force him to. Amalu. So Rami bar Dikuli told him, Shifku, he's not supposed to hit him. The Tanya called mitzvah saseh, shemat and schar b'tzida im bezin shal matam uzarna, that any mitzvah where the Torah gives the schar, you're not let her go ahead and you're not let her force a person to do it. And keep it of the aim, it says, L'man yorichon yomecha. So it's mat and schar b'tzida. If it's mat and schar b'tzida, you can't do this. Amalei. So Rav Chizda said, Chazina lach techarifa tuva. He said, you know what, I underestimated you. Meaning, till now, he was eating the kral when nobody ate the kral. He went ahead, he took pits that were maybe yayin nesach, that didn't even belong to him. He's not wearing tefillin, he's not wearing tzitzis, but he knew I can learn it. You know, Lamaisi, he knew the halacha that kol mitzvah saseh. Exactly. He said he knows the halacha. He said kol mitzvah saseh shemat schar b'tzida. So the halacha is that you're not allowed to force. So he says, wow, I see you're a big charif. Amalei, so he told him, you have a ba'asri to Rabbi Yehuda. He says, you think I'm a charif? He says, now I'm not even home. If I would have been with my Rebbe, if you would see me talking and learning with my Rebbe, then you'll see what a charif I really am. Either way, we'll end on this note. Exhale, read. But just a very interesting. So there's a lot here, obviously. I mean, you have lachas of tefillin, you have lachas of tzitzis, you have yayin nesach, you have yush bailim, of course, chal, which is what we're talking about. But just one ha'ara as it relates to this story, and then we'll go back to the beginning of the daf with Yalta, who was Rav Nachman's wife, and that is the halacha is talis she'ula kol shleishim yayim patim and tzitzis. He said he wasn't wearing a talis, and he wasn't wearing tzitzis. He said the reason is because it's a talis shula, because it's not my talis. Incidentally, Reb Chaim Shmulevitz in the Sichas Musa said, think about it for a second. Put the pieces of the story together. This Yid, Rami bar Tamri, the who Rami bar Dikuli. Think about what a poor person he was. So this is a Yid he doesn't have his own talis. He has no food. He's literally taking the udders that the oilam is throwing away. He doesn't even have wood to make a fire. So he has to take pits that have things growing on it. There's mold, there's vegetation growing on it. That's how he knows that the Bailam Amiyayish. Nebuch, he's a Baal Yasurim, he's a Chaylim Ayim, he's potter in a tefillin, and he comes in on Erev Yom Kippur, where there's a mitzvah to eat, and instead of knocking on somebody's door, what would a person do? You knock on somebody's door, ich bin Ayid, ich come from Pumpadisa, and he says, maybe you could, Tatlofish, exactly. He says, maybe you can invite me in for an Erev Yom Kippur Suda. He says, so why wouldn't he do it? So he says, because you find by Kadmoinim, they only wanted to be Nenemi Yagir Kapam. And the Gemara says, Pshait nevilta b'shuka val yitzarech alabrias. This is in a Sikh or Chaim Shulevitz. He says, just think about this Yid, how Moise Nefesh he was. He just didn't want to have to come on to anybody. But either way, one of the things he said is that a talis she'ula kol shloishim yoyim is p'tura min atzitzis. Says Toisvis, very long Toisvis, hafoichba the kulaba. There's a line in this Toisvis, top Toisvis Kufyuram and Beis, that Rabbeinu Tam said that's pashut, that if a talis she'ula is chayiv and tzitzis mida iraisa la'achar shloishim yom, you'd be chayiv and tzitzis right away. Talis she'ula kol shloishim yom p'turim and tzitzis, but after 30 days you'd be chayiv and tzitzis. Says Toisvis Vais Tois mida iraisa, you always patim and tzitzis. It's just that the Rabbanan said after 30 days you should go ahead. After 30 days you should already put on tzitzis. Why is a talis shula patim and tzitzis? Presumably because it says kisuscha in the parish of tzitzis, and just like lo yeira lecha shalcha yataroya aval ataroya shalacher kisuscha your kisus is chayv tzitzis. But if you're wearing somebody else's kisus, you're not chayv tzitzis. But what's the difference between before shloshim yom yachar shloshim yom? Why would the chachamim say that after 30 days you should be chayv tzitzis? So Rabbeinu Tam said a gevaldige zach. He says we know stam halva is shloshim yom. So if somebody lends somebody money and they don't make up when exactly this loan is going to come due, so stam halva shloshim yom. 30 days, he has. For 30 days, you can't ask him for money. You have no right to go over to him and tell him, I loan you money, give it back to me. Now, you loan me the money, stam, we didn't make up a time, I get to keep it for 30 days. But after 30 days, the loan is already become due. Stam halva shloshim yom. Says Rabbeinu Tam, you can't deduct the stam shela shloshim yom. Stam shela is also 30 days. And it's for that reason that being that stam shela is shloshim yom, so the Chachamim said, for 30 days, I'm not worried. Because being that they're rising in achayiv and tzitzis, and you borrowed it, and up to 30 days, it doesn't look like anything other than the fact that you borrowed it. But after 30 days, where stam sheila already would go back, so why are you wearing this beged more than 30 days? Oh, it looks like it's yours. Being that it looks like it's yours, for that reason you're going to be chayv. But Rabbeinu Tam was meichiach from all the things that you could take out of this sugya, literally, the kasha lai lefartam, all the things that you see here. But at the same time, says Rabbeinu Tam, I'll tell you another interesting thing. That even though stam she'el, that just like stam halva is shloshim yom, stam she'el is shloshim yom as well. But Taisva says, I disagree with Rabbeinu Tam. He says, why? Because everyone knows the halacha. We discussed it a few times when we learned Masechtas Menachos and other times as well. And that is if somebody rents a house, so the halacha is for 30 days, you don't have to put on a mezuzah. After 30 days, you do have to put on a mezuzah. What's the reason? So the reason is that this idea. So says Tosfos, are you going to tell me that it's related to stam schirus being shloshim yom? No one's going to say stam schirus shloshim yom. Stam she'ela, maybe because she'ela and ava are very similar, but schirus for sure there's no halach of stam schirus shloshim yom. Elamai the Chachamim said for 30 days you potter, after 30 days you chayv. So it could be stam she'ela is not shloshim yom, stam she'ela is whatever. But at the same time, as it relates to this particular halacha, the halacha is going to be that 30 days, your potter, after 30 days, already going to be chayv. Then Tosfos says something else, that Rabbeinu Tam was moisef. Rabbeinu Tam said that even though if somebody borrows somebody else's talis, so for 30 days you put them in tzitzis, but after 30 days you chayv in tzitzis, but you don't make a bracha after 30 days. So even after 30 days you don't make a bracha. And then Rabbeinu Tam says that even though Eilish Tasi hold that women who are potter for mitzvah seishas man gerama, if they do a mitzvah seishas man gerama, they make a bracha. Not like the Rambam Shita, which is why the Ashkenazim will follow Rabbeinu Tam. The women who do mitzvah seishas man gerama, they sit in a sukkah, they make a leish basukkah. The Sfardim that follow the Rambam Shita is you're not supposed to make a bracha. But at the same time, says Rabbeinu Tam, even though I hold that an isha who's potter from doing a mitzvah makes a bracha on a mitzvah seishas man gerama, but over here, even lachash shloshim yom, you're not going to make the bracha. Why? He says because a woman, even though she's potter from doing a mitzvah such as mangarama, but men are chayiv. So being that some people are chayiv, that's enough to say that if a woman does it, she gets a kiyum mitzvah, and she even has to make a bracha. But a talis shula, everybody's potter. So I mean that everybody's potter. So for that reason, says Rabbeinu Tam, you don't make a bracha. So it sounds like from here that if you would borrow somebody's tzitzis, or maybe a little bit more common, if you borrow somebody's talis, you wouldn't make a bracha. Because the talis shula, and Rabbeinu Tam says that even though la'achash shloishim yom yichayev and tzitzis, but you never make a bracha. Being that you're potter from tzitzis, kesuscha, midayraisa, even la'achash shloishim yom, it's only midrabban, and Rabbeinu Tam said because stam sheila shloishim yom, pesargis, whatever. But as far as making a bracha goes, you never make a bracha. Stating that's not the halacha. The halacha is that if you borrow somebody's talis, you do make a bracha. What's the pshat? So it's based on something that the Rishonim speak out in this sugya, and that is that this halacha of talis she'ula kol shloishim yom b'termin tzitzis, that is if you borrow a talis that has no tzitzis on it. So you borrow a talis that is a beged shel dalet kanfos, there's no tzitzis on the corners of the beged. So if no tzitzis on the corner of the beged, so there the halacha is that you put them in a tzitzis, and even if you put tzitzis on it, even la'achas shloishim yom, you're still not going to make a bracha. If, however, you borrow a talis that has tzitzis on it, there you're supposed to make a bracha. And that halacha is brought down in Shulchan Aruch. It's in Orach Chaim, Simin Yud Dalet, it's in Hilchas Tzitzis, Sif Kotem Gimel. Hashoyel mechavei talish ina mitzuyet says, Potem elahadol b'tzitzis kol amid yoyim. Dechsiv ksuscha v'loy shel acherim. Aval la'achal amid yoyim chayim midrabanon, v'pnei shenirish shikaloi. Then the Mechaber says, Shah lokishi mitzuyet says, if you buy a talis that has tzitzis on it, mevarich aleo miyad. So then you make a bracha, you mevarich aleo miyad, not only la'achar shloishim yoyim. Mishnah Berurah speaks out that as it relates to the talis of a kohol, let's say a tzibur, a shul, has a talis, and you want to use the shul's talis. There it's pashut that you're supposed to go ahead and you're supposed to make a bracha. Mishnah Berurah gives a reason, the Bir Halacha, there's a whole arichas, sugis of mitzvah, strichas kavah, discuss the sugyas over here. But either way, so this sugya of talis shula called shloishim yom p'tura, that's if you borrowed a talis that has no tzitzis on it, which is very uncommon. If, however, you're going to borrow a talis that has tzitzis on it, so there it's not our Gemara. It's so much so it's not our Gemara that of course there's tzitzis on it. It's not a question if you chayv and tzitzis or not, but where it's nafkamina, where it plays itself out, is you have to make a bracha and you mevarech aleh miyad. Either way, that's just one ha'ara to take away from this Gemara over here with Rama bar Tamri dahu Rami bar Dikuli. But either way, the Gemara began with a very interesting exchange between Yalta and Rav Nachman. So Yalta was Rav Nachman's wife, and Yalta told Rav Nachman Mechti, Kol da aslan rachmana sharlan kavase. Everything that the Torah said is also, the Torah is also matter. So every single thing that you're not allowed to do, if you want to find it, ba'ofen heter, you can find that it's possible, meaning we're not missing anything by the fact that we keep Torah mitzvahs. Because every davar asr that there is, you can actually find a davar mutter. And he went on to list the whole list. It's interesting that Tosfos Dibra Maskell Nidar Dam Toyar quotes from Rabbi Eliezer HaKalir, who discussed in his Yotzris, in Parshas Parah, this idea. So Parshas Parah coming up, this is in Yad Diyema, we're in Yotzra season now. So he says as follows, Moitzi mizolois yikarois, matir me asurois mutarois. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu was matir from asurois mutarois, noisa mitmeis tahiris. And he goes on to explain, this is in Yotzris of Parshas Parah. Shachris. Min ha'chelev, from the Isser chelev, you have Sheimin Halev. Min hadam, you have the Tchoil hadam. Mi basa v'cholav, you have tchal ha'cholav. That's today's daf. Mi kilei begodim, you have tcheles besadim. So you have kalayim, but at the same time you have sadam etzitzis, which is okay. Me'eshes ach, you have yibum ach. Me'eshes ish, you fast toyel ish. Mi tumas nidas isha, toharas besule isha. Me heter iser, me iser heter. What's interesting is, the Tosfos quotes Rabbi Eliezer HaKalir, it just bothered me. Tosfos refers to him as Rabbi Eliezer HaKalir. And there's no little aleph beis, gimel dal, no aleph beis next to it. So is it Rabbi Eliezer HaKalir? It's not Rabbi Eliezer HaKalir. It's actually Rabbi Elazar HaKalir. But parenthetically. In fact, so who was Rabbi Elazar HaKalir? Again, this is the season now. This is Yotzra season. So who was Rabbi Elazar HaKalir? Tosfos Masechtas Chagiga Daf Yud Gimel Amud Aleph says that it was none other than the Tana Rabbi Elazar Reb Shimon. So Reb Shimon Bar Yochai's son, Rabbi Elazar Reb Shimon, he was the Kalir. Rabbi Elazar HaKalir wasn't a Rishon. He wasn't a Kadmon. He's the Tana Elikim, Rabbi Elazar Reb Shimon. There's a tshuva from the Rashba where the Rashba says that it was Rabbi Elazar ben Arach. Just had in the daf last week, Mitzvah Lishmaya, Divrei Rabbi Elazar ben Arach. The Rashba says in the tshuva that it's the Tana Rabbi Elazar ben Arach. It's Yidua that Even Ezra in his Pirush on Kehela spoke very sharp about the Kalir. He said there's a lot of grammatical mistakes and he spoke very, very sharp. And there's a letter that we've quoted in the daf from Kiveger. Kiveger wrote also very uncharacteristically sharp Keneged Even Ezra, who spoke sharp Keneged the Kalir, and he says, how can we be mezalzel in these piyutim and in these yotzras? At the end of the day, who's the author? It's Rabbi Elazar Kalir that the Bali Tosfos and the Rashba said is either Rabbi Elazar ben Arach or it's Rabbi Elazar Reb Shimon. The Tshuva Me'ahava, Rabbi Elazar, not Rabbi Elazar, Rabbi Elazar Fleckless in his Siman Aleph, Chelik Aleph Siman Aleph, the very first Tshuva Me'ahava, he has a whole arichos. It's a pilpul nifla with bekios and charifos. It's mamish kedai to see inside, where he brings us Even Ezra and he's mafalful and he has rayas that Rabbi Elazar HaKalir from different things that he said was Rabbi Elazar ben Arach based on different memories and stories and shas. Either way, it's a fascinating shmuz. But regardless, Rabbi Eliezer HaKalir or is it Rabbi Elazar HaKalir? But the story itself. So what happened? So Yalta told Rav Nachman that everything that Torah asked is mutter. So the one that's most interesting is he said that the Torah said that a chazer is aser, but if you want to know what chazer tastes like, there's a way to know what chazer tastes like. Eat the meicha de shibuta, eat the brain of this fish that's called the shibuta, and by eating that, you'll be able to know what the chazer tastes like. The Chidah in his Pesach Einayim, on this Gemara right here, in the Masechtas Chulin says, Mikan, from this Gemara, he shafti lenichvad gevir echad. So there was a bakavadig gevir that came to him, and he cleared a shaila. And the Chidah said, I was able to be poished a shaila from this Gemara. What was the shaila? He says, we know that the man tasted like whatever you wanted it to taste like. So when you ate man, if you wanted it to taste like meat, it tastes like meat. You wanted it to taste like coffee, it tasted like coffee. You wanted it to taste like whatever you wanted the man to taste like, that's what, very good, that's what it tasted like. So this gvir came to the Chidah, he said, I want to ask you a question. Let's say somebody was eating the man, and he had in mind that it should taste like chazer. And then he ate it. Was he over the Issa Chazer? Let's say a person was eating the money, had in mind it should taste like a cheeseburger, basa v'challah, and then he ate it. Was he over the Issa basa v'challah? Said the Chida, it's a great shayla. Wow. So somebody's eating the money, has in mind that it should take like a tava and then he eats it. Is he over the Issa machalas asuras? So he said from this Gemara, I was poished him that it's a dava pasha, it's okay. He says why? Because what would be the reason you would say it's asa? Because you're eating something that tastes like chazer. He says, but you see in this Gemara that chazer is not a taste that's inherently asa. Because the same chazer is also the meicha de shibuta. I saw a tshuva from the Chabina Rav. I didn't have a chance to really go through it. But he discusses whether if somebody would cook chazer with meicha de shibuta, would it be a taruvis mimimina? Would it be a taruvis mimimina? It tastes exactly the same. So being that it tastes the same, that it could be a taruvis mimimina, that if it's nishbach, you have a suffix shishim, you can go lahakal because it's fake rabban alakula. But either way, said the chida, I see from this Gemara that it's not something that's inherent, and every davar rasa has it in its mutter. So I don't know what all the other things are, but the bottom line is said the chida, it's pashit from this Gemara that if somebody would eat the man and he would have in mind that it should taste like machalas asuras, it'd be okay. You wouldn't be over any isur. Stating that, I don't think it's so pashit. And why is that? Because there's a pasuk in Parashat Shlach, in the Parashat Haman. So the pasuk says like this: Vayomer Aleim, Hu Asher Diber Hashem Shabbos and Shabbos Kodesh Lashem Machar. So it was erev Shabbos Kodesh, and Moshe Rabbeinu tells the Yidden, he says, Rabbi say today you're going to get man, but you're going to get 2 times man. Lechem Mishnah, right? That's what we have a mitzvah Lechem Mishnah. And he told them, that if you want to bake the man, you have to bake it today on Friday. And if you want to cook the man, you have to cook it today. Right? Rashi says, he says, if you want to bake it, you have to cook it today. Why? Because tomorrow Shabbos. I mean that tomorrow Shabbos, it's not going to be okay. This is a pasuk and a Rashi ala Torah and Parshas B'Shalach in the Parshas Haman. The Chida in his Sefer Pnei David brings a kasha that he saw from the Rash Primoy Zatzal. So this is a kasha from Kadmoin. His kasha was that in Parshas Baloich, that's the other Parshas Haman. So the Torah over there talks about the man as well, and the Torah says Shatu Am V'Laktu, that the Am, they went and they collected the man, they gathered it, V'Tachnu Berichayim, and they grinded it, Oidachu B'Medoichu Ubishlu, they cooked it and they baked it, Vayetamai Kedad L'Shadashamim. It tasted like whatever you wanted it to taste like. Zok Rashi, V'Tachnu Berichayim Lo Yared Berichayim, that the man, even though the pasuk says that they would grind, it never actually went into a Reichayim. V'Loi B'Kteira, even though the pasuk says they cooked it never went into a Kteira. V'Loi B'Meducha, they never pressed it. Ela Mishtana Hayatama, it was all tam. L'Nitchanim, U'L'Nidoichim, U'L'Mevushalim. If you wanted it to taste cooked, it tastes cooked. If you wanted it to taste pressed, it tastes pressed. But everything was based on what you want. So the Rash Primoy asked, he said, Gevald, what if it was never cooked and if it was never baked? Vazok Rashi. It's a pasuk really in Parshas B'Shalach. The Moshe Rabbeinu tells the Yidden that Shabbos Kodesh L'Hashem Mach, tomorrow's going to be Shabbos. Is Asher Toifu if you want to bake it, if you got to bake it today. Veis Asher Tavash if you want to cook it, Bashelu, you have to cook it today. Why? Because tomorrow's Shabbos, and tomorrow you're not allowed. They never cooked it. It never went into it. It was all b'machshava. So if it was all b'machshava, what was the big deal? B'machshava? What's the problem if you do something b'machshava? So he does the chida that the Rashmi Pramo proved from here that you see from here that if a person does a malacha afilu b'machshava, if you do a malacha afilu b'machshava, the halacha is it's considered a malacha. And being that they were taka cooking it b'machshava, doesn't matter. But being that it was all done b'machshava, that was enough for it to constitute a malacha, and that's how you reconcile 2 Rashis in Torah, 2 Rashis ala Torah. Mamish psuki Torah. On the one hand, they weren't allowed to cook it on Shabbos, but then again, they never cooked it. So if the whole thing was done b'machshava, what's the big deal? He said, you see from here, that's not even machshava is going to be a problem. Rav Hersh Pesach, Rav Tzvi Pesach Frank, the Rabbi of Yerushalayim, in Eirachayim Simon Kuf Ayin Dalet has a tshuva. Listen to the shayla. Somebody asked him, Uvda Hava b'misha yesh lekelev. There's somebody has a dog in his house, Ma'uman, but he's a trained dog. Umelumid gam lekiboy nerach hashmal. So this dog, he was trained to the T. So he even knows how to turn the lights on and off. Shabala Kelev Roimizloi, the owner of the Kelev, right? The Bala Kelev, he's beramiz. Yeah, he's Roimiz to him. Uleichetz beraglei ala kaftar hanitzmad lehash. So all he has to do is a little wink, wink, and by him being miramis, right? He goes like a little. The dog jumps up. He reads the. Yeah, exactly, and he knows how to turn the lights on or off. So here's the question. So said Rav Tzvi Pesach, the question was brought to me. Is it okay to do it on Shabbos? He said the lafum riyat at first glance ain't kanasiyas malacha biyadayim. You're not really doing a malacha. Ela grama ba'alma. All it is right. This is grama. It's not amir lakim. It's amir lekelef. So it's not even amira. This is all b'machshava. This is all b'ramisa. So it's a grama. Ukidamina b'Shabbos. The Gemara said Masechta Shabbos lo yisasim malacha. Asiya hu da'asar grama shari. Shabbos kuf chav amid beis. Ve'efshet is a kill me grama. They ain't kamaisa klap. Grama is always the pshat. You do a maisa. Right? And that Maisa causes a trigger. Grama, Garmi, right? All the nuances. He didn't do anything. This is like Kamat b'machshava. That's all it is. Zokt Rav Tzvi Pesach. This is the friend. He wrote a whole tshuva on this. The Inkamat Goyma. But this is how he starts his tshuva. Ach haloim ro'isi l'marash frimoy zal. Huva dvarav. In a sefer, I think that's one of the chidas for him. Shekasa be'inyan haman. Shayim v'shtamet hamay v'chulu. And he brings this marash frimoy l'halacha that you see from here that if somebody does a melacha yedei machshava with regards to Shabbos, it's a problem. Because otherwise, why would the Yidden not let her cook the man? They weren't cooking it anyways. It was all b'machshava. So again, this is a whole discussion. He gets into Shvisas Behema and Grama b'Shabbos, which is a Magen Avram Kiyutu Vadvar Matike. But it's just a fascinating thing. Another thing, parenthetically, that comes out from this shmuz. So there's a sefer called Heir Yosef. Heir Yosef was written by Reb Yosef Aryeh Lawrence. He was Reb Shlomo Lawrence, the famous Chavra Knesset's son. So Reb Yosef Aryeh Lawrence, the Sefer Heir Yosef, it's on Reb Kiva Eger, it's on different Mesechtes. So this particular volume is on the Lamites Malachas on Shabbos. It's a real Lamdish Sefer. So in the introduction to the Sefer, he brings that he sent certain shilas when he went through in the things that he discussed in the Sefer. He sent certain shilas to Reb Chaim Kanievsky. So one of the shilas he asked Reb Chaim Kanievsky was like this. B'Sefer Pnei David Rav Chida, b'Parshas B'Shalach Hiksha, he brings this Pnei David that we just spoke out. Where the Chida brings this kasha from Marash Primoy, who asked that what was the problem to cook them on Shabbat? They didn't cook it anyways. The whole thing was b'machshava. So he said, you see from me that cooking b'machshava is going to be a problem. But he asked from a Gemara Masechtes Shabbos Daf Lametes, where the Gemara says that if someone cooks on Shabbos b'chami tveria, hamevashel b'chami tveria potter. There's no problem. Or if somebody would cook in the sun, it's so hot outside that he takes a raw egg and it starts cooking outside. So the halacha is he's going to be potter. With the chametz mutar lechatchila, mevashel lechamit tver is also midrash. But the point is midiraisa it's bishul not bishul. And the reason is because when it says in the Torah that bishul is aser, it means it has to be told asar. You have to cook al yidei fire. But if you're not cooking with fire, so then the halacha is not going to be bishul. So he asked Reb Chaim Kanievsky. He says, I don't understand. Barash Primo said that if you would have cooked on Shabbos bit machshava with the man, you would have been over this bishul. The chayra, this is all on dairaisa level, right? Obviously, we're handling bishul dairaisa. It's not told asar. So he said, if it's not told asar, why would it be bishul? Gewaldige kasha, tshuva. This is Reb Chaim Kanievsky wrote back. B'sefer Moshev Skeinim mibali atoisvis parshas bal loischa kosav kein ayin sham. It's not only the Marash Freeman Reb Chaim told him, but this is already the Bali Tois already said this chiddush, and then he wrote in parentheses. This is all Reb Chaim. V'kosavti bazeh b'derech hamuna hilcha shmita ke'es b'tfus be'ezus Hashem yisbarach. U'masha heir mi told us chama as it relates to your kasha sham ein derech aviyasei bekach masha ein kein b'man. Those were Chaim's territory. Chaim said Gavaldik. What's pshat it has to be told us? So there's a din that bishul deiraisas fire. What does that mean? What it means is that on Shabbos you only chayiv if meleches machshavas as retire. If you do it in the way that you're supposed to do it. He says today people cook with fire. Nobody cooks in the chamit feria. Nobody scrambles their eggs, outside when it's a hot day. And as a result, it's not derech bishul. So if it's not derech bishul, that's not going to be the bishul that the Torah is going to be chayiv. But when the Yidden were in the midbar, derech bishul was b'machshava. So being that was the derech bishul, so it's poshut, said Reb Chaim, that's going to be a bishul deraisa. So either way, again, there's so much here, so many layers as it relates to the Pnei David. But l'chayru one ha'ara, and that is that if when someone had a machshava that the man should taste like basar, so the man remained the man, it just tasted like basar. Or if someone had in mind that the man should taste like challah, so the man remained the man, it just tasted like challah. So that would mean, just think about it, that if someone had in mind that the man should taste cooked, nothing changed in the man, it just tasted cooked. If that's what happened, then what's the problem to do this on Shabbos? There's a problem to make something taste cooked on Shabbos. If someone had a machshava that the man should taste cooked. What happened? The man cooked. That's it. Now all of a sudden you had a medium rare steak. That's what happened. Or no, the man looked like the man. Whatever the Torah describes it as, that's what it looked like. Just when you tasted it, it tasted that way. If that's the case, then why are we even having this conversation? You didn't cook anything. It had a tam bishul. It had a tam bishul. No one said you're not allowed to eat the man on Shabbos. You can eat the man on Shabbos and make it taste like raw meat. No one has a problem with that. The issue is bishul. You're cooking. Bishul's one of the lamatas malachis. That's the issue. Look, what's the issue? It was never cooked. It just tasted cooked. What did you do? You know what it sounds like from this Pnei David? You know what it sounds like from this Marash Frima, from this whole shmooze? That when a person ate the man and he had in mind that it should taste cooked, that what happened was it didn't just taste cooked, it actually cooked. Being that it cooked, you were mevashel on Shabbos. Now yesh lachker. If someone's mevashel on Shabbos, like yedei machshava, is it bishul or is it not bishul? So what's the shiloh? It's grama. That's one shiloh. Rav Hersh Pesach. Then you could down that maybe it's told us chama. It's not told us or. It is the derech Kanyevsky. But the point is now we can sit and we can have a conversation. Geschmack shmooze. If you're cooking al yedei machshava, right? Another shiloh is if someone's mevashel, if someone does a malacha derech skuli. Right, Moshe Rabbeinu wrote Yud Beis Sifrei Torah on Shabbos. The Rosh is Kashi. If Moshe Rabbeinu was nifta on Shabbos, that's why we say it's a Kasch on Shabbos. See the Kantin on Shabbos, because Moshe Rabbeinu was nifta on Shabbos. It says he wrote Yud Beis Sifrei Torah, so he did it by Ashpas Kulmas. All this ray, that the Ashpas Kulmas, maybe it's not us, because you only do it with us. That's another thing you can discuss as it relates to having a machshava, but that's all if you're actually cooking the man. If the man is cooking, but if the man is remaining the way it is, it just tastes cooked, then l'chayra, what's the problem? So Zeh Mashma Gevein, from this Pnei David, and this Marash Primoy, and this whole Arichos in the Achroinim, that when someone had a machshava that the man should taste a certain way, the physical nature of the man actually changed. It cooked. Now you have cooked man. So if you have cooked man, now you cooked man, then it's good. The problem is if that's the case, how does it do with our chidah? We started this shmooze with a chidah on the Pesach Hinayim. Where the chidah said that what would be, he said this gvir, this nichba came to him and he asked him a festa shayla. He wanted to know that if somebody had a machshava that the man should taste like machalas asuras and then he eat it, is he over this machalas asuras or is he not? So he said, what should be the problem? Because it tastes like machalas asuras? If something tastes like machalas asuras, maybe it's the shibud. How do you know it's the chazer? Maybe it's the meicha de shibuta. That's all. If it didn't change physically, it just tasted a certain way. So you're right, the Chidah was able to prove from Chulin Koftasam and Beis that taste is not something that's inherently aser. All right, because for everything that has a tam of vista, you have the corresponding tam of eter. But if the way that the man worked is that it physically changed, if it physically changed, then now it's a shtik chazer. If it's a shtik chazer, then why shouldn't you be over? Then it would make sense maybe they should be. In other words, yesh lachker. We know the man tasted like whatever you wanted it to taste like. Somebody ate man. How did it work? Is the pshat, you had in mind that it should taste like a rib steak. It became a rib steak. Now you're sitting with a rib steak in front of you, or no, it was what it was. It was just a question of taste. If it physically changed, then we understand the Pnei David. If it didn't physically change, then we understand the Pesach Hinayim. There would seem to be a little bit of a steer over here in the Chidah. Either way, a fascinating question. If somebody ate the man and he had a machshava that it should taste like machalas asuros, then he ate it. Was he over the issa machalas asuros, or was he not over the issa machalas asuros? Just to end on one ha'ara. So the Gemara over here says that if somebody wants to know what Chayalta told Rav Nachman, I know that if I want to taste the chazer, so there's a way to eat chazer. How? The meicha de shibuta. The meicha de shibuta is a shtik chazer. The truth is, on the topic of Jews eating chazer, there's a fascinating medrash on the pasuk ve'esa chazir. The pasuk says that lo b'nikra shmei chazer. Why is the chazer called the chazer? The reason is she'asad HaKadosh Baruch Hu lahachazira. Because even though right now the chazer is aser, but there's going to be a time that the chazer is going to be mutter. So there's going to be a time where we will be able to eat the chazer. It's interesting that the Chassam Sofer, in his Teres Moshe, in Parsha Shminis, he brings this medrash, and he brings a Geshmaka Kasha that he heard from Hagoyin Hagadol, Rab Abba Zatzal of Bezdin, the Frankfurt the Main. So I think he means Rab Abishol, who was the famous Rav of Frankfurt the Main. But either way, he brings this Kasha that he heard from Rab Abba Zal of Bezdin, the Frankfurt the Main. And that is, we know that Allah is that a Dova Sheyesh Loi Matirim doesn't become bottle. So if you have something that's aser and it's a Zarav in the Taruvos, we are learning the sugyas of Basav Chol of Taruvos now. So if it's a Zarav in the Taruvos, the Allah doesn't become bottle b'shishim. Why? Because it's going to be mutter anyways. And Acha Techlanu Be'isa, Techlanu Be'heder. So for that reason, any Dova Sheyesh Le Matirim the Allah doesn't become bottle b'shishim. The Bach quotes an Ur Zarua, where the Ur Zarua discuss that let's say somebody has a piece of meat where there's a shaila in halacha whether you could eat it or you can't eat it. And the halacha is teku. Tishbi yitaritz kushyas v'habayis. That's the halacha. The halacha is teku. And then it's Nisara v'Taruvos. So do you say that it's mutter ayidei bittul or not? What's the tzad not? Because being that tishbi yataretz kushes v'aboyes, so it's possible that Novi's going to come, he's going to tell you it's mutter. On the tzad that it's mutter, now it's a davar sheyesh latirim. So if it's a davar sheyesh latirim, maybe it shouldn't be bottled. It's an Erzerua. The Bach brings it in Yeridei, Haflefel, and Simon Kuf base. He brings, if you have a chatichas basar that has on it a din teku, and now it's Nesarav and the Taruvos. So do you say bittul or do you not say bittul? Again, why not? Because being that Eliyahu Navi may be matter it, so maybe you have to look at it as a suffix davar sheyesh lematirim. So maybe b'chai gavno you're not going to have a law. He says there's a ruah a gevaldige svara. He says davar sheyesh lematirim means something that's for sure usher now. That's going to become mutter. So what's a classic example of a davar sheyesh lematir? Beishan al d'yantiv. A beishan al d'yantiv is aser on yantiv. So beishan al d'yantiv is aser on yantiv. But after yantiv it's going to be muktzah. Muktzah is aser today, but tomorrow it's going to be mutter. So right now it's aser, but actually techlanu b'aser. You can't wait until Chalmai, you wait till tomorrow. Tomorrow it's going to be mutter already. You'll be able to eat it then, you have nothing to worry about. That's a classic example, meaning the Isser that you have today will no longer be there tomorrow. But in this case, but you have a Chatichas Basar, we have a suffix. You're not sure if it's mutter or if it's aser. So what are you going to tell me that Tishbi Yataritz Kushis V'Abayis? Tell Eliyahu Navi's going to come, he's going to be matter. If Eliyahu Navi's matter, what's going to be the pshat? He's going to say it was always mutter. He's going to say, Gloi Muslim, I'm afraid that it was never us. That's not Davar Sheyesh Matir. Davar Sheyesh Matir is the pshat. This Isser that's going to become mutter. On the tzad heter in the teku, it's not the pshat it was aser that became mutter. The pshat is it was never aser. I mean that it was never aser. Lo yalzen nemra the halacha of davar sheyesh lematirim. Said Rab Abishol, but I took out from this Erzerua Gevaldig Gezach that the fact that Eliyahu Navi would be matter something. The fact that something's going to be mutter lasud lavi is enough to make something a davar sheyesh lematirim. It's just the pshat that by every taker it's not a davar sheyesh lematirim because of the lumbus of davar sheyesh lematirim. Because davar sheyesh lematirim means it's asa that becomes mutter. Over here, if Eliyahu Navi is going to be matter, it's going to be gloi muslim afraid that it was never asa. But that in and of itself, that Eliyahu Navi can come b'meir b'yameinu and say that this is mutter, that's enough to render it a davar sheyesh lematirim. So based on this hanacha, that really is tucked away in the Erzerua. Said Rabbi Abishal, I have a kasha. Chazal say, why is the chazer called a chazer? Because one day, Lasad Lavi, the chazer is going to be kosher. Chazer is for sure not kosher today. One day it's going to be kosher. If that's the case, it's a davar sheyesh lematirim. If it's a davar sheyesh lematirim, his kasha was that the it should be not batal. And loy shamanu v'loy ro'inu. No one ever heard such a chiddush that a chazer, everyone should be viewed as a davar sheyesh lematirim based on the fact that Asra Kadosh Baruch Hu Lachzira says the Chasam Sofer. Pshat says that I think the whole kasha is based on the toys. He says it's true the chazer one day is going to be mutter, but you know what the gather of the chazer one day being mutter is? The gather is that Hakadosh Baruch Hu is going to make the chazer a kosher animal. Meaning right now the chazer is mafreses parsa, but it's not malagera. Right? There are 4 animals that have one of the 2 simonim. You have the gomel and the shafan and the arneves. They're all malagera, but they don't have mafreses parasa. So the chaz is just the opposite. He's mafreses parasa, but he's not a malagera. Said the Chasam Sofer, when Mashiach is going to come, he's going to be a malagera. And being that he's going to be a malagera, he's going to have all the kosher simanim, and Mele is going to be a kosher animal. He said it's not the pshat that the Eibush is going to take, mamish, the lumdus of how the chaz is going to be kosher. He's going to take the chazer that's not malagera, that doesn't have 2 kosher simanim, and say, Afal Pika and it's kosher. No, the gather is that it's going to have 2 kosher simanim. Of the gather is it's going to have 2 kosher simanim. It doesn't affect this chazer. This chazer that Alamos and a chazer. He says it's the new chazer, the chazer that's going to be malagera, that's going to chew its cut. Of that chazer, different chazer. That chazer is we don't have. The chazer we have today will never be mutter unless it's not a davar sheyesh lematir. But then the Chasam Sofer says that the truth is that even though the Medrash says that the chazer one day is going to be mutter, but really the real oimek in the Medrash is something else. And that is that we know, the Svar Makdoshim say that the 4 animals that the Torah lists as the non-kosher animals, the Gomel and the Shafan and the Arneves and the Chazah, they all represent the 4 nations. They all represent the 4 nations that took the Yidden into Galus. And the Chazar is the 4th one that's mentioned, and it's connected the 4th Galus, that's the Galus that we're in today, that's Galus Edom. And he says the real oimek of Asa HaKadosh Baruch Hu Lachzira is that Edom is going to do tshuva. Edom's going to come around. And the same
Edom, the Romans that destroyed the second Beis HaMikdash, and the Noitrim that gave the Yidden such tsaras for 2,000 years with pogroms, and whether it was the Crusades or the Spanish Inquisition or the Holocaust, and all these different tsaras that we got, Asad HaKadosh Baruch Hu Lachzira, Shalo Asad Yishapchu Kol HaUmos V'yoydu L'Shmei HaGadol. That's what it means. It means that the same ones that were giving us all these tsaras, says the real oimik is it's going to be v'nahapachul Yehudim, that the same people that gave us the tzaras, they're going to come around. Asad HaKadosh Baruch Hu Lachzira. They themselves are going to have a change of heart. The Rebbeinu Bechaya talks about this in Parshas Shmini as well, and he says that Edom is going to be the ones that are going to give us reshus to build the Beis Hamikdash. This is already totally in all the raid of the Drisha Sian and Rav Tzvi Kalisher, the Radak raid that we spoke about when we learned Masechet Zvachim.